Hello and welcome to Radio NIGP. The topic for this month is Mindful Moments, Improving Your Situation. May is Mental Health Wellness Month, and we here at Radio NIGP are celebrating in a big way. Today, you'll hear from experts in the field of human resources, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We'll hear about some ADA accommodations, and one great thing you're going to hear is more news that you can use as it relates to the upcoming forum. But before we launch into the program, I would like to take this opportunity to share with you a video from the White House. Enjoy the video and enjoy the show. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you back here again real soon. Take care.
Hello, I'm Dr. Miriam Delphin-Rittman, Assistant Secretary for Mental Health and Substance Use in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, a time when the nation comes together to help spread the word about the vital role mental health plays in our overall well-being. At SAMHSA, we remain fully committed to increasing access to mental health services and supports across the country. We want everyone to know that people with mental health conditions can experience recovery and live full, whole, meaningful lives. And we can all play active roles in caring for our mental health. Practicing self-care, asking for help when needed, and checking in with ourselves and people around us all can make a difference. If you're looking for services in your community, visit our online resource at findtreatment.gov. Or if you or someone you know is in crisis, call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org for help 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Hi, folks out there in NIGP land. This is David Nash with Radio NIGP, and today I'm pleased to have Dan Marin of the City of Sparks, Nevada, joining us. And we're talking about knowing when enough is enough, or it's time to go, or anything like that. So we got Dan on as our guest here today. And Dan, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into procurement?
Sure thing. Well, I'm currently the contracts and risk manager for the City of Sparks, Nevada, as you said. Obviously, and I think it goes true within our industry, and I've said this before, no one grows up wanting to be a purchasing agent, but it's something we evolve into, and it's a profession that I'm very proud of because we do very important work, and the variety is what keeps you going most days. If you get frustrated with one industry or one customer, you can move to another one pretty easily. But for myself and my background, I've been with the City of Sparks now for 17 and a half years. And previous to that, I held similar positions with the City of Ventura in California and a small school district before that. All told, I've got 25 years in public procurement and continue to be a proud member and have every intention of continuing with that. That's how I got to where I am today.
Yeah. Okay. Well, can you tell us about your decision now to move on and do something else?
Well, a little bit of context. When I was hired into the city, I was hired in as the purchasing manager, purchasing by itself. And this was in 2005. And when I was hired in, I was the leader of the division of 4 people. It was the purchasing manager, a senior buyer, and a purchasing tech. And as noted, that was 2005. And when the Great Recession happened in 2008 through 2010, like a lot of agencies, we shrunk. Mm-hmm. For my division, we shrunk by 75%, and that was via attrition, buyouts, and eventually a layoff.
Wow.
And I became a solo operator in April of 2010 and have been ever since. And so when those sort of cutbacks happen in an organization, there's a lot of thinking processes through what can we change, what can we reduce, and their thing, credit to management where due, they at least for a bit of time said, we're not going to do more with less. We're going to declare we're doing less with less because we're cutting back. My department wasn't the only one that was cut. A lot of people were. The problem with saying that to qualified professionals in our industry and others in local government service is we are all very hesitant to try to cut back the services we offer. Some cases we can't, but in most cases, we want to maintain service levels. And so we do whatever we can to, at least outwardly to our customers, provide those services on an ongoing basis. So literally overnight, I'm suddenly a one-man show, and I had to quickly figure out processes to maintain levels of service to my client base. And honestly, in the first 3, 4, 5 years, I was very proud of that. I maintained levels, maintained output. My clients were happy. They continue to be happy to this day. And it worked for a while. It did. And unfortunately for myself, in my particular situation, our standalone risk management division also was liquidated in the same time period. And at the time, I foolishly, in retrospect now, said to one of the managers, hey, risk management sometimes falls within procurement because we're dealing with contractual risk management all the time. And I have some ideas on how this might work, not really having a firm grasp in my mind of what expectations may be. And so 2 or 3 years into my sojourn as a solo operator, suddenly they said, hey, now you're the contracts and risk manager. And hey, here you go. And the only remuneration that came out of that was new business cards. There was no compensation that came with it. There was just an expectation that, hey, now you're also responsible for this. And so within my organization, that is the management of all of our supplemental insurance policies, not health benefits, but general liability, property, crime, all those things, managing those policies, managing the claim process for the city. So when a citizen does the trip and fall, or we crash into somebody, or a sign gets knocked down, all of that work flows across my desk.
Right.
Now, worth pointing out here, people have asked me before, do you have any clerical help? No. have not since 2008. And so what happens when I go to an NIGP conference or something else, I have a process that I follow where I have a list of core customers in my organization, and I'll send them an email 15 or 20 days out saying, oh, I'm going to be gone this chunk of time. Get your work in now or know that it's going to sit for a week, one or the other. And I've got responsible clients that like that, and it works for them. So here I am, the late teens of the 2000s, and this is continuing to go. And honestly, the workload builds and it continues to build. And what occurred was 2 budget cycles now. So we're looking at 2020, 2021, when the city finally recognized, you know what, we need to stand up a standalone risk manager again. And I was grateful for that because I had finally reached a point where trying to satisfy all my customers at a certain level, I'd come to recognize in myself that while I was getting the work done, I wasn't getting it done to my personal satisfaction, my goals.
Yeah, we all have standards,
I use the phrase with others that I'm doing 2 jobs and I'm not doing them too terribly well. I would rather focus on one or the other. I was hired as the procurement manager. That's where all my certifications lie. That's where my passion lies. And so I was grateful when the organization said, yeah, we'd like to go look for a risk manager. Again, that was the spring of 2020. We are now in the spring of 2023. We've had multiple unsuccessful recruitments at this point. We haven't actually managed to hire anybody in that position.
Wow. And
that combined with other organizational issues caused me to be more conscious of vacancies that were out there. I will say, I've used throughout my professional life when I was managing people and even in speaking to my supervisors, that none of us should be blind to opportunity.
Right.
Ever. The right thing comes along, you should take a look because that's how you grow.
Right.
And for myself, over the last 6 or 8 months, I even informed my boss, I said, look, I'm a lot less blind these days. Unless something changes, I'm going to have to change because I found myself becoming more easily triggered, bitter, angry, frustrated with every client that came in the door. And it wasn't their fault. It was mine because I felt beat.
Exactly. We have standards and we can't meet them. Yeah.
So for myself, I was pleased. And I have found another position, and I did actually offer notice to my organization yesterday. And it's a strange feeling since we're talking about the general health. And I had a conversation with someone yesterday and they said, this will improve your health. And I absolutely believe it affects both physical and mental health.
Yep.
The strange thing is, both last night after I got home, because I gave notice, like I said yesterday, when I got home last night and I sat by myself, I didn't feel the sort of joy that I thought I would, because
No.
I honestly feel like I'm disappointing all my customers again.
Yep.
I
understand.
It's surreal.
Yeah, when I retired, I had a feeling like I was letting people down. Yeah.
Well, for me, my primary clients are, for instance, my engineering division that bids all of our public works projects. In my organization, all construction projects come through procurement. I do all the formal bidding process, the processing of contracts, and that sort of thing. And so, by nature of my giving notice now, I just put a hole in their bidding calendar of at least 3, and I suspect 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
I already have everything scheduled through the day that I'm gone. And I had to tell somebody, in the last hour, I'm sorry, we had scheduled this thing for the week after I'm leaving, and I can't do any further work on this. And I have no idea who's going to manage for you after the fact. Yeah. And that in itself is disappointing to myself as a professional. And
exactly.
There's nothing I can do about it.
No.
I feel like I'm going through stages of grief at the moment, but
yep,
it'll get better.
Yeah.
It's got to get better.
It's kind of interesting. It's kind of a wrap up here. If you got some advice that you could provide to our listeners about maybe, what is it, like a breaking point? Is it a series of things over time that you just finally decide it's time to go, or?
It was cascading events.
Okay.
If you hit me 15 years ago, I actually gave a presentation at an NIGP or a Capo event or something like that, where it talked about moving up in organizations.
Right. And
the premise of that presentation was the only way you're moving up in our profession is if you're willing to move and change agencies. Yes. And that was the thing at the time. That's not so much the thing anymore. We're all having trouble recruiting. Yes. And so I'm sensitive to that. And so opportunities present. It was cascading. My wife and I, when we were discussing the job, the analogy we used, I don't know if you're familiar with the TV show on HGTV or one of those, where it's love it or list it, where people are choosing to decide whether to move or not.
Yeah.
And so the joke became in our house, what can we do with your job to make you want to stay?
Yeah.
and what was that list? And truthfully, it's a list that they couldn't fulfill.
Yeah.
Because while, yes, there are a couple of mechanical things that they could probably change their mind and start working on, it wouldn't represent an immediate solution. It wouldn't even represent a certain solution. It's just the prospect of a solution. And am I willing to wait for that? Because in my mind, I've waited, in this case, 2 or 3 years for them to clear stuff off my desk. I have a huge to-do list that I assembled that said, once I become a free-range purchasing agent again, this is the stuff I need to get back to, because
do you feel like they may have taken advantage of your professionalism?
Oh, absolutely. And I have had others say that to me as well. I don't think they did it consciously.
No.
I think they looked at it and said, wow, he's keeping things running. That's great. But there was no the circle back or conversation that said, this is the effect it's having. So when HR or the city manager's office is saying, you know what, we're still going to do that recruitment for risk management, but we're going to delay it for 6 months. And this is our new target date. And then if they don't communicate that back, or even ask, what kind of impact will this have on your workload? That's where, you start tuning things out. And it's frustrating, because I don't like seeing that happen in an organization that I've invested so much time in and really liked. I moved 600 miles to come to this job 17 years ago. Uprooted the family, pulled everyone up, and came here and expected to retire here. But that all changed in the recent past. And I'm excited about the prospects of where I'm going. It's good. I'm staying within the industry.
Well, that's good. We hate to lose you, that's for sure. Well,
I expect to stay active with NIGP and other things. It's just it was time to look at other avenues.
Time to go on.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you spending time with us today, and I think our listeners are really going to find some useful information out of that. So I appreciate you coming by today. And folks out there in NIGP land, I hope you enjoy this segment, and we'll see you again on a future episode of Radio NIGP.
Good afternoon. Kirk Buffington with Radio NIGP, and a discussion this month on mental health and the ADA. it can be tricky for employers to know how to handle mental health issues under the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. So it can be a very good thing for you as an employee to be familiar with the law to help you with any interaction you may have with your employer. And more importantly, if you supervise employees, you have a heightened responsibility to your employer and to your employee to be familiar with the ADA. The Americans with Disabilities Act states, no covered entity shall discriminate against a qualified individual with a disability because of the disability of such individual in regard to job application, hiring, advancement, or discharge of employees, employee compensation, job training, and other terms, conditions, and privileges of employment. It applies to all employers with 15 or more employees and extends to private sector, state, and local government employers. Some key points for you to understand or remember when approached by an employee with a potential disability. Disability is defined as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, sometimes referred to in the regulations as an actual disability, or a record of a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity, or when an employer takes an action prohibited by the ADA because of an actual or perceived impairment that is not both transitory and minor. Courts also have found that the following constitutes disabilities: depression, carpal tunnel syndrome, HIV positive status, irritable bowel syndrome, and back injuries. Employers, and you as a supervisor, may not question applicants about specific disabilities, only about their ability to engage in specific business-related activities. An employer may have to alter the working environment to accommodate a disabled applicant or employee. If someone does not have a disability, but others believe he or she does, that person is protected against discrimination based on that misconception. That misconception could create a hostile work environment. The definition of disability under the ADA is not limited only to physical disabilities. Employers are not required to provide any possible accommodations that may be requested by an employee with a disability. According to the EEOC guidance, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, in requesting reasonable accommodation, an employee may use plain English and need not mention the ADA or use the phrase reasonable accommodation. A request simply asking for continued employment can be a sufficient request for accommodation. The employee does not need to request specific accommodations. So, just a few things to keep in mind if and when the time may come that an employee comes to you in confidence and expresses challenges that they are having in the workplace. So thank you for listening. Kirk Buffington, Radio NIGP.
Hello and welcome to Radio NIGP. My name is Bobby Tolston and I'm your host today for Deeper Dive, Making a Splash. Our topic today is mindful moments and finding ways to improve upon your situation. Welcome to May, Mental Health Wellness Month. I am so happy to be part of this panel discussion because I have my own situation that I'd like to discuss with you during our show about my mental health crisis. But before we dive into that, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce my wonderful panel to you. So let's start with you, Stacey Gregg. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am Stacey Gregg. I am a mother of one who's getting ready to graduate from Claflin University. That's the big thing in my life right now. And I'm Director of Procurement at South Carolina State University.
Thank you so much for that. And congratulations, man. That sounds like eons ago for me. My daughter's so old, I forgot she went to college. Thank you so much for sharing. My next guest today is C. Armstead. Good afternoon, C. How are you today?
I am extremely well, Bobby. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you and others on this important topic. I am C. Armstead, and in my day job, I serve as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the American College of Surgeons. I am also founder and principal of Observations, a consulting firm dedicated to enhancing DEI in associations. And also, I serve for NIGP on the Talent Council as a DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion thought leader.
Thank you so much, C. And that's actually where we met. I also serve on the Talent Council, and it's been such a wonderful experience being on the council and serving for the Institute in that capacity. So thank you so much for joining us. Last but not least, my best friend, Felice. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Bobby, and hello to the panelists and to your audience. My name is Felice Critchlow. I'm an HR professional, been in HR for over 30 years. The majority of my time has been spent in the public sector, municipal, county, and then transportation. My current stint is in the private sector. I focused a lot in my career on wellness, benefits, on-site clinics, and leave of absences. Currently, I work in the area of global compliance and ER and investigations.
Wow. That's why you're here. I really appreciate you ladies being here with me today as we dive into the topic of mental wellness. As I mentioned earlier, a few months ago, I had my own mental health crisis. It was at a time in my life where things had started to unravel, and I needed help to get myself back on track. Excuse me. As a result, I required psychotherapy. And for those that aren't familiar with the term, that includes working with a licensed psychiatrist and having a prescription for mental health wellness drugs. I was on a prescription for over 2 months. I was off work for 12 weeks. My whole life has changed as a result of that. And since that time, I've started a regimen of 5 pillars of self-care, which includes breathing, sleep, nutrition, spirituality, and movement. I get all of those things, and they fulfill me in a way that I have not been fulfilled before. When I tell you that I'm a different person, it's not just a cliche. I'm a much better person. I am more healthier, both emotionally, physically, and mentally. But it took a lot of work to get here, and it's a lifelong journey, one that I'm willing to take. I'm taking it every day. But just knowing that there is such a stigma around mental wellness propelled me to have this conversation today with my panel and with you, NIGP Radio loyal listeners. So why don't we go ahead and dig in? So, C, what are some ways that managers of organization can recognize that they have blind spots that can potentially impact their employees' mental wellness?
Great question, Bobby. I must first, though, respond to your introduction and commend you on the courage to do what you needed to do to take care of yourself, that radical self-care, and then incorporating it into a ongoing lifestyle. That is so critical for all of us. And then, as I mentioned, I work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. It is especially necessary for those from marginalized, underrepresented backgrounds because we deal with extra layers of stress. So truly commend you, Bobby, on taking care of yourself so that you can be here to share with others. So your question about blind spots is sort of an oxymoron in that if it's a blind spot to me as a manager, obviously I don't know it. One of the ways that I would recommend in becoming aware that one, I as a manager might have a blind spot, and then how to address it is, if possible, set in place 360 reviews. Those formal structures where not only does the supervisor do a performance review for the employee, but the employee has an opportunity to safely give feedback on the supervisor. And then if possible, peer-to-peer review, and totally that 360. And I emphasize the safe part about the employee giving honest feedback on the manager. That takes an infrastructure that's willing to set up the mechanisms where the employee will not be penalized for telling the truth. Mm-hmm. So that's one formal way. One other way I'll offer for consideration that's less formal is for the manager to develop a trusting relationship with someone who is part of their team, mm-hmm. or someone in some way is in a position to hear things that the manager might not hear, and to become aware of things that the manager might not be exposed to. And having that trusting relationship where that person knows that they can tell me, the manager who has blind spots, can tell me the truth. So those are a couple of suggestions.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, C. And I can tell you that I have worked for an organization that implemented the 360 reviews, and having the opportunity to give feedback in a manner in which it's not going to be retaliatory is very important. Also, recognizing and having that trust, not only with your supervisor, but with someone that you respect, so that you have an opportunity to get that off of your chest. One of my issues was that I didn't have that. I didn't have someone that I trusted enough within my organization to have that conversation. So as a result, it just kept piling on. And you all know, when you sweep it under the rug, you get this big pile in the middle of the floor, but at some point it has to flatten itself out. So having that opportunity for that feedback is very important to employees' mental health and well-being. So thank you so much for pointing that out. So Felice, what are some ways that HR can advise managers how to recognize emotional wellness for their staff?
That's a good question, Bobby. And there's a lot organizations can do. So when we talk about performance, so you mentioned the 360 review. I think that's very good information in terms of getting that feedback. But from a perspective of ER and how I coach and deal with managers every day, and I see these issues on a regular basis, it comes in the form of performance or behavior where an employee may not be who they are and they're different. And so if an employee is typically a good employee and then they have some off days and they're typically consistent, a good employee, and then you have some behavior or performance issues or attendance issues, that's a way to recognize that there's something going on. You mentioned the trust and the vulnerability, and I think managers have to acknowledge and or meet with employees on a regular basis to know who their employees are and know when there's a change in their behavior and their performance, right? And be comfortable with saying, okay, you're not performing the same. Something's going on. And I know a lot of managers are gun shy because you get into the HIPAA and managers really are careful about that, crossing that line. But it's okay to ask your employees how they're doing. And because you don't know, and especially if they're not performing at the level that they're typically performing at, or they have these bad behavior outbursts and things like that come with stress. And so it's important that managers acknowledge and ask the employee if they're okay and have resources to offer to that employee, whether it's EAP or some organizations have extensive wellness programs where they can tap into those resources, whether it's counseling or whether it is sessions on how to deal with stress. And so those are just some of the ways that managers can acknowledge and or recognize emotional or issues with their staff.
That is excellent and a great point, because in my situation, I saw myself being a person that I wasn't, right? I saw myself saying and doing things that was like, wait a minute, this isn't me. So having the ability to self-manage, self-recognize, it helped, but it didn't help me in enough time or in time enough for me to correct. One of the things that I found through working through my therapist is that she categorized it as me draining my battery. She said, you just ran out of juice. you needed an opportunity to just go and re-energize yourself. And I have to be honest with you, I have more energy now than I did prior to my breakthrough, because I don't call it a breakdown. I broke through. And I had to get through where I was in order to come out on the other side. See, when you break down, you can't go through. So it was a breakthrough for me. And having that breakthrough, my smile has gotten brighter. My spirit has gotten better. And I can actually say I'm at peace. That's not something I could have said this time last year. Not only do I have peace, I have joy in my heart. And that's not something you can put a price tag on. So my breakthrough broke me to a better me. That being said, my question is for my bestie up there, Stacy.
Yes, ma'am.
Please share with our audience things that you have done in order to improve your mental well-being.
So personally, I'll say in the past couple of years, I have been struggling as well. I say I had a twin sister. I watched her go through cancer treatment and finally pass away in November. And a lot of people don't know she was the last in a series. It was 2 aunts, a cousin, and a sister-in-law from November to November. And it took a lot out of me, not just because it was lost, but it was, how do you put that inside the context of your whole life, right? Like, I have a daughter who lost all of these people as aunts for her. Her dad's sister, her mom's sister, and my twin sister was like her mother. So how do I make sure she's okay while I'm making sure I'm okay? I started noticing some things about myself that wasn't me. And my daughter being the mouthy, your children are always honest with you, right? So her being as honest as she was with me, and then me kind of bouncing that off of other people, and they're like, oh yeah, we see a change. Well, it actually drove me into a place where, okay, I'm just going to go find a therapist that can really sit down and work with me. I'll tell y'all that I'm very bad at getting help. And I was so frustrated with the first few sessions, but then one day a light bulb went off, and I decided that the problem wasn't the therapist. The problem was me. And I was not giving her what she needed to work with me. And so after that breakthrough, everything turned out okay.
Yes. It's amazing when that light bulb comes on when you're working with the therapist, because in a way, we're trying to self-heal ourselves, right? We know what we need, but we're telling them, this is what I need. And they're going, well, no, can you try this? You're like, no. This. So it took me the same thing. It took me a few sessions before I figured out that I had gone to the expert, and I was not.
Right. That self-diagnosis and self-treatment. If that worked to begin with, I wouldn't have needed it. Right.
Well, in our culture, when you say that you're going to a psychiatrist, people think you're crazy, and maybe you are. But it's just like you just mentioned, if you have cancer, you know that you need to go and get a cancer specialist. And I can never say that word, but you need someone that specializes in whatever your illness is. I am so happy to be here today to talk about it. And I feel no shame. I feel only joy, because had I not recognized that I needed the help that I needed, I could still be out there where I was a year ago, and I wouldn't be on this wellness journey and being able to sit here and have this conversation for other people. When you say that it's a stigma, I think that doesn't describe the magnitude of how people feel about bringing forth their mental issues. So one last question, and I want to go around the horn and ask both C and Felice this question. Based on your experience, what are some of the ways that employees can create or cultivate a mentally healthy work environment for their employees? Felice, would you mind going first?
Sure. Having done wellness and on-site clinics and really kind of delving into how important it is to have a primary care physician, have those preventive care appointments. There's a lot of things organizations can do to support and help employees through these types of issues. And it's through the benefits, expansion of behavioral health services through health insurance, tap into the EAP services, which on most organizations, they're free. It's a free service. You can get a certain amount of visits in terms of behavioral health, and then you can roll it over to your health insurance. And then there are other expansions of EAP that people don't even know about, to tap into those resources of training and sessions that help employees through, a lot of people are taking care of aged parents. So that's you need mental health to deal with those things. So EAP has a plethora of resources, right, to tap into that. And that's free for employees. Legal services, financial services, that impacts our mental health, right?
Yes.
We want to make sure we have enough money to take care of ourselves today and then through retirement.
Right.
So, and most importantly, not just expansion of the benefits, there's, the campaign of, wellness and taking care of oneself needs to be communicated. And it has to start at the top with the CEO, and then just continuously pushing that message. And not only that, training managers to, one, recognize and offer up these resources, communicate these resources are available, and encourage people to take them, right? So we hide behind, we got FMLA, but it's one of those things we don't want to talk about because we don't want people to take it. No, encourage people to take those leaves, right? I have FTO. So, it's kind of like, if I need to take time off, I take it. Right. And that's a new thing that a lot of organizations are doing. You have FTO, and it's, that's, frequent, flexible time off, and it's unlimited. And then tap into the benefit side of things, whether it's short-term, long-term disability. And then, a lot of states have, short-term, long-term disability programs. So it's about educating all employees, but more importantly, managers, so that they can offer up those resources when people need them. And even if they don't take advantage of them, at least a manager has offered it up, right? Yes. So that's just some of the things an organization can do.
Wow. Thank you so much for that insight. And I totally agree. Having managers to inform their employees on a regular basis that these benefits exist, I think is very important, because we hear what we hear when we need to hear it, right? So if I tell you something and you don't need that information, it doesn't register with you, right? But if it's a continuum, when you are in that place and in that space when you need it, now it's going to resonate with you, and now you're going to act on it because now you need it. So thank you so much for that. And what kind of feedback do you have on that question?
I'll start with ditto everything my fellow panelists said. But I'll also take it from a different perspective. And that is the concept of how the organization can establish an environment for creating a psychologically healthy workplace. And then picking up a point that was just made on the importance of the frontline supervisor, the manager, having the training, the education, and the willingness and self-awareness as a supervisor of how to cultivate that psychologically healthy workplace. A couple of examples. As was mentioned earlier, I work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, and the principles and practices there apply to everyone to build a healthier place for all employees. For example, our workplaces consist of very diverse people. Each one of us, we're unique in what we bring to the table, our backgrounds, our personalities. Certainly there are commonalities, but we are each unique. So the manager taking the time to get an understanding of who's on his or her team, particularly their direct report, and understanding how best to work with that unique person helps to create that psychologically healthy workplace. Diversity is good, having diverse individuals from diverse backgrounds in the workplace. However, diversity, when it's not managed properly, can contribute to a psychologically unhealthy workplace. You just throw a whole lot of different people together and it's not managed, you have chaos. So the more that the direct supervisors, those on the front line, can learn how to manage diversity effectively, that helps to create that healthy workplace. Then the concept of equity, and emphasizing equity is different from equality. So as a manager, I cannot treat all of my direct reports equally in this respect. Obviously, we do want to have common ground, common things, but each person is different and requires different approaches to help them have the best workplace experience. One quick example. At one point, I had a small team, and one of my team members was an extreme workaholic. I loved her work ethic, but it was not healthy mentally for her, that the way she attacked her work. She felt she wasn't doing enough if she only worked 12 hours instead of 14 hours. The other staff person on this very small team was at the other end of the spectrum. I was lucky if she showed up and did 4 hours of work for the 8 hours she was there. So I needed a different approach to approach them with equity, meaning that looking to bring both of them in from their unique perspectives to that middle ground. So that is the importance of the direct supervisor taking the time to know their staff and interact with them in an equitable way, which may not always be equal. The last point I'll conclude with is that inclusive leadership. Lots of information out there, lots of research, lots of resources of how managers, particularly the higher up the food chain we go, they benefit themselves, first of all, and then their teams in learning inclusive leadership, how to create that environment where everyone feels included, everyone feels like they have a meaningful part to play. That's going to contribute to that psychologically healthy workplace.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for breaking it down for me. I feel like I just had a class. Thank you. I'm serious. I just learned like 5 things right now. And those are things that I think managers need to learn. The things that you are saying, there are a lot of us that are managers. Unless we decide to go off and get education on our own, we're educated by our employer. So if our employer isn't educating us in the way that we need to be educated to be the most efficient and effective managers that we can be creating situations, right? Because we say we need diversity. So we just go and start hiring all these people from these different backgrounds with no insight or training on how to manage them as individuals. So thank you so much for that. And Stacy, how would you like to close for us? What do you have for our audience that you'd like to share?
that pesky mute button. I'll share that we are all responsible for each other, right? Like that's that old saying, am I my brother or my sister's keeper? We absolutely are. If we're a manager, we have more of a responsibility to make sure that the people around us are okay. That's not only to protect them, but to protect the rest of the staff, right?
Yes.
And so I think the way that Miss Felice and Dr. C have eloquently stated it today, we have to start building, if we don't already have it, trustful relationships. And there has to be a level of empathy that we have for everybody, not to the point where we're overlooking everything, but
Right.
just actually seeing people for who they are and where they are.
Wow. Wonderful close. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before we leave today, for those of you who plan to attend the conference in Louisville in August, I will have a session, 2 sessions, to take a deeper dive into mental wellness. The session is Becoming a Human Being and Not Just a Human Doing. Let's discuss wellness. That's part 1. Part 2, we'll have some activities. We're going to do some yoga. Right now, we're still building on that agenda. So I'm so excited, and I hope to see you guys in Louisville. I'd like to thank my guests again so much for joining us today. And everyone, remember, mental health is not a stigma. Enjoy the rest of your day and come back again soon. Bye.
Thanks for watching another Chapter Updates segment. Have you ever seen those folks at your chapter meetings or at NIGP events who are really involved? They're helping, they're speaking, and they seem to know everyone? Ever wonder what makes them tick and how they manage to do so much? Take a look at the list of roles on the screen, and you will see the work of just 3 very special people who fit that description to a T. Let's give them each a penny for their thoughts and find out how they do all this while balancing their work and life. So today on Chapter Updates, I have with us Megan Walteri, Joe Benjamin, and Lori Bryant, all to talk with us about volunteer efforts in the chapters and NIGP and beyond. So first, I want to kind of ask all 3 of you, what is your why? What brings you to the volunteer table? Why do you volunteer either, at the chapter level or at NIGP or both in other areas? So Megan, let's start with you.
So my why, I love what I do. I love the procurement piece. I love the contracting piece. Everything I do every day, I enjoy it a lot. Being able to push that enthusiasm out through volunteer efforts, working with NIGP and working with my chapter, that's my why, right? Like I get to communicate to everybody. I love my job, and this is kind of how I show it.
Joe?
Yeah, I would agree. I'll echo what Megan said. The first part would be the passion for the profession. But at the beginning, I'll add into it by saying that at first I heard it was about how valuable the networking was. And I thought if I get involved, I'm going to learn some things. I'm going to find a network of people, and I'm going to get better at this. So that's what it was for me at the beginning. Now it's paying it forward because so many people helped me in that volunteering and helped me understand the profession and stay up on best practices. So yeah, now it's purely, as Megan said, is that it's a passion for something I really love doing, honestly.
Okay, great. Lori?
Well, yes, I also have a great deal of passion for and love for what I do. But I think after I attended one of my first, maybe my second TAP meeting, I remember how excited people were for a new program that they were going to be doing with legislation and a new group that they were forming there. And we just talked about how we didn't ever, because we were in the west part of the state, and Tennessee is very long, and so we hardly ever got to go to any of the meetings. So we were talking about how nice it would be if we could get a group or a meeting over on our end of the state. And when I saw the chapter president at Forum that year, I mentioned it to her, and the next thing I know, she has a phone call for me asking me if I wanted to be vice president. So, I've gone from there and thought and realized how much I enjoy working with everybody across the state and making those connections and letting them know how much I enjoy doing this, the work for them, and making sure that they have the opportunities that I had.
Great. All right. So now we all know why you do it. So talk to us about how you balance everything. I know pretty well that you all are very involved in a lot of different things. And so how do you, I'm sure there's stress, you have a day job and you're volunteering to do other things. So how do you balance that stress and manage that, and how do you alleviate that? How do you deal with that? So Joe, let's start with you this time.
Okay. For me, it starts with making sure that my agency leadership understands that I have committed to volunteering to, whether it's FAPO or NIGP or the local chapter, that I'm very involved, and I specifically tell them what that entails currently. And I think it starts with the support. From there, I block my calendar off, and I take that very seriously. And somebody tries to put something on over that, I explain to them, that I have the support of the agency, and that this is very important that we, not step on these appointments and these things that I have to do. And frankly, guess what? Sometimes you have to carve out time at home. It may not be something you can do at work all the time. If in place, while you're on the job each day, you may have to take some of this home, and quite often you do, just to do the things that you've been charged with in your volunteerism. So that's how I balance it, is that at some point, I'm a director now, so it back in the day that wasn't the case. I was a buyer or contract manager. Little bit easier to do it then. It's a little bit more of a challenge to find that balance now, but I'm not afraid to tell somebody that if I had to, I might have to say no to something. I haven't yet, though.
Lori, how about you?
I think likewise, I carve out time to do things on my calendar as well. I make sure that if I've got a conference call coming up, that it's on my calendar, so that the people who are looking at my calendar and scheduling things for me are not scheduling on top of those things. I think it's a matter of allocating your own time as well, to know not just how much time you're going to need for meetings, but also to know how much time you're going to need to manage a project that you might be doing. So even if you're not actively meeting with someone, there may be paperwork or there may be calls that need to be made outside of that. So that's just part of managing your time in general, and managing your priorities that way. Also, my boss is also very supportive of me being part of the Tennessee chapter and NIGP. So, and he's very proud that we have an opportunity to be on the leadership of some of those things. So, he has been very supportive of me being part of this and taking the time to do the things that need to be done there as well.
That makes a big difference, doesn't it?
It does.
Megan, how about you?
Pretty good. I use technology to kind of organize myself. So I've got conditions set up in my inbox. I like everybody else on the panel. I've got specific times blocked out on my calendar for specific tasks. I color code things. So my NIGP stuff is bright green, so I can kind of see what those priorities are from week to week. I'm fairly lucky. Most of my kids are pretty much grown and out of the house. I've got a junior and a senior, and I never see them unless they need money or food. So I can take, I do a lot of my volunteering at home on the off hours, just to make sure that, number one, I'm not interrupted. And number two, I know it'll get done, as well as being able to kind of execute the tasks that I need to for my day job.
Good. Now, let me throw a little side question at you. So who has a good stress buster? What do you all do to alleviate the stress? Any thoughts on that?
I like to goof around. If I get really jammed up and I'm just super stressed, I will leave my office and I will go do something fun. Just to try to, I like to laugh. That's kind of my stress relief. That's just what I do. And so if I'm super stressed, I'll go next door to my coordinator's office and we'll kind of joke around about Schitt's Creek, or, we'll throw movie lines back and forth at one another. So I try really hard to just lighten the mood, and then I can come back and really start to focus again.
Joe, Lori, did you want to throw anything there?
Yeah, I would agree with, again, what Megan said here, is that I like to get up. It's funny how she framed it too. And I'll walk door to door to the staff. And the key is I'm just trying to go and make somebody laugh. Because if I make them laugh, it's going to really make me feel up and better. So I have a line I like to do when there's 2 or 3 of them standing around talking. And it's a ruse just to shed light on we shouldn't be talking about anybody else. So I just usually go up and I look around and I say, who can we talk about? Who's not here? And they love to hear that. And they know that I'm joking, of course, and we're not going to talk about somebody. But it just lightens the mood, and somehow we get to talking about the weekend or whatever. And so it is a good stress reliever. Get up, walk away from the desk, laugh or make somebody laugh, and then you can come back and get back to it.
And I think as much as having people around the office to get up and share a funny with, or share a problem with, or whatever, it's good to have things away from work too, to be able to relax, and whether that's watching movies, whether it's exercising and going for a walk. It's good to take those opportunities to get your body chemistry reallocated to where you can feel like you want to go back in the next morning and do it again. So
my go-to is to crochet, and it's so funny. My son will laugh at me because if I'm just really concentrating and crocheting, he'll be like, okay, what problem do you have at work that you're trying to solve? Because I can count, but my brain can keep thinking. So that's my trick. Okay. So last but not least, how do you know when to say no? And have you? Lori, why don't we start with you?
I think I know when to say no when maybe I don't have something that I feel I can contribute to it. It's, people come to you because I'm busy, and because they know that I know what's going on in the chapter or wherever, or in NIGP, and they'll come to me and ask me about doing something, or ask me how to make something happen, and I might give them a nudge in another direction as to somebody else who might be able to help. But if I don't have a good feeling about what could be done or should be done, or if I don't feel like I've got a passion for that item, then it's probably a good reason to say no. And I'll point them in another direction. So,
Megan?
Full disclosure, I have a hard time saying no. I honestly don't have an answer because I have a really, really hard time saying no. And that's just a personal thing where I don't want to let anybody down. And I think you'll find a lot of us in this profession, we all feel kind of the same way, right? We don't want to say no. We don't want to let somebody down. And so that's something that I've been working on.
Joe?
Like I said earlier, I haven't done that yet. I don't think I would actually have a problem if I felt like I couldn't. But that comes again from what all three of us said here, and I believe Penny would say as well, is that we're not afraid to take it home with us and realize that this is an all-in kind of thing, that you can't expect to just only have that time to do that at work every time and still be able to devote the time that you need to do the things at work. So just the willingness to do that. I just measure it by tell me if somebody's asking me, tell me what this entails and how much time do I need to devote to this. And there's been times I thought it was close, maybe I shouldn't do this, but I did it, and I'm sure glad I didn't say no. So I haven't done that yet, and maybe I'm just a closet denier here, and Megan's right, and I don't know how to do it.
Right there with you, Joe. So I don't think I prepped you all for this, but I want to ask you one more question. So what do you get from your chapter? What is the best thing that comes out of being a part of your chapter or really being involved at the NIGP level? And whoever wants to go first, go first.
For me, I think friendship. As much as I appreciate the networking and being able to call on colleagues, the friendships that I have made through TAP and through NIGP have been invaluable, and will hopefully last longer than we are employed. So it's
I'm going to echo that. It's not just the networking and the professional development. It's the friendships. I don't know how many people from my chapter just, every once in a while I'll get a text message like, hey, how's it going? Or, on holidays, like happy Thanksgiving, happy Mother's Day, happy birthday, like those kinds of things. It's great. It's a nice network of professionals, but it's also a great group of friends.
Yeah, and I would be remiss if I didn't echo the same. It definitely is about those special relationships and friendships that you make within the chapter. And I'll just add to it too that it, not just my own professional development, but being able to, my peers walking up, whether they're new to the profession or they've been around, and asking for my help, my guidance. Can I help them with something? Can I show them how to do something? Or can I introduce them to someone that they really want to get involved? Or how do I get involved? And I really love the fact that it feels good to know that they can come to me. They have the confidence to come to me and ask me about those things. But number one would be exactly what my co-panelists have said here. The friendships are invaluable. You can't replace that.
I think it's nice too that we've got this group of friends that do the same thing that we do, that we can commiserate with. Like if I go home and I start talking to my husband about, all of the stuff that happened today, it's all going to go over his head because he doesn't know what an RFP is. He doesn't get protests. He doesn't that's just not his realm. But I can text a friend and be like, oh my gosh, you are never going to guess what this project manager just gave me. And they'll get it, and they'll probably have a worse example.
That's great. And I have to say, I know all three of you in different avenues through my volunteer efforts, but you're all definitely in my friend group. So I have to echo exactly what you all said. Well, thank you all very much. This has been really good discussion, and we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Hello, folks out there in NIGP land. Welcome to Hot Topics on Radio NIGP. I'm David Nash, together with Tara Acton, Kevin Yen, and Charlie Rossol. And today we're going to talk about the broad question of when is enough is enough. When should we maybe think about stepping away from a situation? And I'm going to kick things off here with a story from my time in the military when I was stationed in Darmstadt, Germany, back in the mid '80s. We got a new battalion commander in, and he's new on the ground, and he's reading a lot of books and talking to a lot of people and everything. And he was staying late till like 6:30, 7 o'clock every night. And prior to his arrival, most of us were going home in normal business hours, 5:30 in the evening. All of a sudden, the colonel noticed that everybody else was staying till 6:37. So they were waiting for him to leave before they would go home, felt safe going home. They didn't want to be noticed going out to the parking lot. So he called a meeting of all the officers and said, "Look, folks, when I need you to stay, I'll have you stay." So the point we want to kick this off with is oftentimes leadership sets the tone in an organization that we're in. So that's something to think about. Kevin, you want to take us on from here?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. That's a great story. It is the boss does set the tone in any work environment, and one of the things that I have preached to my team is knowing when to say when, as well. And given the pandemic and the issue that this has created, which is shortage of staff, of qualified staff, I think all across the country we're all facing the same thing, and that is probably a 10 to 30% staff shortage. And what that means is the survivors, the folks in the office, have to pick up all of this extra work. And the reason we do that is because I think as professionals, we just want to put out a great product, and we want to make sure that that work gets done on time, meeting customer expectations and all that stuff. But we also have to be mindful of our own capacity. And the story that I have shared with my team is think of ourselves as a rubber band. You can stretch it only so far, it will break. But if you stretch it a little at a time, just beyond the maximum, it will expand. So you will find yourself doing remarkable stuff beyond that max that was 6 months ago, right? And so you will continue to grow and able to expand more and more, but you're the only person that knows when is enough. And so for me, the argument in my head is, if I tell myself I'm just going to do one more thing, that means I need to stop and not do that one more thing, because that one more thing is going to get me in trouble somehow. Either I'm going to make a bunch of errors, I'm going to kill myself in that process, or whatever. And what came about of that was many years back, I had a skiing accident, and that was because I told myself I had such a good time that even though I was exhausted, I told myself, I'm just going to go do one more run. That one more run gave me a face plant. I probably did a 360 face plant. And my leg was in it was separated from each other. But it was terrible because I injured myself because of that one more. And so ever since then, if I hear an internal voice that says just one more, I'm just going to stop. And that's my internal voice that says that's enough, right? And so you have to know when your enough is enough. So, because you're the only person that knows yourself.
Kevin, thank you so much for that story. It was interesting listening to both you and David talk that from that leadership perspective, one of the things that really stood out to me at the last forum was when one of the speakers talked about why would anyone want to become a director? Why would anyone want to take our place? Because what we're modeling right now, we're modeling the burnt out, the being asked to do too much. And so if I want somebody that wants to follow in my footsteps, I need to make sure that I'm setting the example that this is actually a lifestyle that you want. And so I need to be more careful about making sure that I go home at regular hours, or like in Dave's example, that I communicate to my staff that I'm staying late tonight for this very particular reason. I don't expect you all to stay here with me. I don't expect you to put in those kind of hours, because they are going to be nervous and think, well, if the boss is doing it, I should be doing it too. And then hearing you talk about the just one more, I'm notorious for saying, if I can just get through the next couple weeks, if I can just get through this month, these deadlines will be gone, this issue will be wrapped up. And I think living your life just getting through is not a great place to come from. And so one of the things that I kind of want to share about is that volunteer experience. And in so many ways, being a volunteer with NIGP, having been a volunteer with my church, that is actually my mental health break from the chaos that is work. But it requires a lot too, and it's a lot of work too. And I am one of those people that I'm very prideful about the type of work that I put out, whether it's volunteer or it's in the office at my job. And when you start to get recognized as the busy person that it can accomplish things, you get a lot more asks. And then that raises the level even more, because if Kevin Yin calls me and says, hey, Tara, I want you to be part of this thing, I want to be part of that thing. I want to be involved, but I need to be able to recognize when my capacity is there. And I will tell you, I'm not good at it. I'm not good at saying just one more. I'm not good at saying, can I really make time for this? And it's something that I need to work on. But I also have had to teach myself and share with others this idea that if Kevin calls and says, hey, Tara, do you want to do this thing? I don't have to say yes. I can say, Kevin, wow, I'm honored that you offered for me to join you on this activity, but I don't feel like I have capacity. And what it might actually do is open up an opportunity for someone else who hasn't been pegged to do these kinds of things. I don't want to use the example that we talked about before, because I just don't like that athlete, but there's multiple stories where a quarterback got injured in the middle of a game, or somebody got injured in the basketball game, and their backup person had to step up, and they made a name for themselves. They did amazing things. So I think sometimes just being able to recognize that my quote unquote no might actually be a yes for someone else. It might actually open up an opportunity for someone else. And that gives me a little bit of peace of mind of not feeling like I've dismissed somebody or not accepted the honor of being asked to help. Being able to say, you know what, I might not be the best person for this right now. I'm really busy, but have you thought about asking so-and-so? Or here's somebody that might be able to fill in instead. So, Charlie, I see you looking at me. So you got anything to add to that?
Oh, yeah. So first of all, thank you for allowing me to talk to NIGP and be on this awesome team with you, Dave, and Kevin. Oh, every time I see Kevin in it, I just remember when Kevin taught his class, it was just, I could always remember that. But, so when is enough? It's a very good question, because for those that you probably can't see because it's all blurred right now, but I am sitting in my truck outside of my son's orthodontist appointment, recording this as we speak. So Tara sent me, hey, are you joining? I'm like, oh crap, I completely forgot. So when is enough, right? It's just it's a work-life balance. It's just so hard. But one thing I always tell my team is, number one, family comes first. Yes, you got to get the job done. There are deadlines and things like that, but family always comes first. If there's an appointment that comes up, you have to go with your mother or your grandfather or somebody to take care of a doctor's appointment, whatever it might be. That comes first. Work will always be there. We will get it done. If it's truly a life or death situation, you know what? We'll all join in and teamwork and get the job done. But as I said, family comes first, just like with volunteering, not just with NIGP, but also with the 2 chapters I belong to here in Ohio. When I was chapter president of PANO, I told my team, the board, I said, listen, your work comes first and your family comes first. We are volunteers to keep this organization called PANO running. But you know what? Family is the priority and work is the priority. So, it's a balance, and it's hard. Plus, if you're a coach, I remember like back in the day, I can't remember how many years ago, I was one of the first chapter ambassadors of Area 3 with Carl Benito. Well, after 2 years, I had to step down. I didn't renew because being ambassador, the chapter president, I became the procurement manager of my department. I was coaching my kids, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am going absolutely crazy. And for me, if I can't give something 100%, I got to say enough's enough. I got to drop something. And I felt really bad telling Jen Stefan that, hey, I'm sorry, after my 2 years, I'm up. But I had to do it because I was going to lose my freaking mind. But now let's fast forward. My kids are older. They're 16 and 13. I'm not coaching anymore. I'm not president of my chapter. Yes, I am a director of my department, but I got more free time. I'm doing this in quotes from my phone, free time, but now I'm able to jump on board with this awesome team, with Radio NIGP. I'm also, so I want to get back involved. I want to get back to NIGP more, my chapter, and also, do whatever I can as director for Cleveland Metro Parks.
Yeah, and just a quick note too, that if someone is asking you to volunteer, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I just don't have the capacity to do it at this point. But like what Tara mentioned, hey, have you thought about XYZ person? But also give them that option that, hey, if you can't find anyone, come back, let me see what I can do. Right. I'm happy to step in temporarily and help out. That also gives them an out, gives you an out, and it leaves the process, both parties in a good spot. But just to close us all out here is that, we're giving you a bunch of advice in here, and and you may be listening to this and thinking, oh my gosh, these people got it all figured out. As you can hear from all of us, we don't have this figured out. So it's far from it, and we're learning as you are. And but the thing that we and hopefully we have passed that on, and you heard it through here, is that we have the tools to know when our capacity is reached, and that and know when to say when. Again, thank you very much for joining us. This is Radio NIGP.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kirk Buffington again here with Radio NIGP. I'm very excited this afternoon to have a brief discussion with Carrie Winter, Director of Events and Program Delivery, and the go-to responsible person for the 2023 NIGP Forum in Louisville, Kentucky. Carrie, how are you?
I'm great, Kirk. Thank you so much for asking.
Well, thank you for spending a little time with us to let the membership know what's coming and exciting news for Forum in Louisville. So tell us a little bit about where you're at, some numbers maybe, and how things look.
Yeah, so things are looking really, really good. We are just under about 400 people registered right now for the in-person experience in Louisville, and just around 200 for the virtual experience. So we're tracking pretty well, looking like we're going to have a really good turnout in both scenarios. Early bird registration ends May 31st. So I think folks, that's usually the deadline and the what they're working toward to be able to get that the best deals. So if you haven't registered yet, now is your time to do so before the end of May so that you can get those best rates.
Great. So tell us a little bit about the delivery this year. How is it different from last year as far as content delivery?
So there's a couple of things that we're trying new this year. First, we have a new virtual platform. We like the platform that we had the last 2 years, but we did receive feedback on the platform and from the in-person audience that we did not provide a native mobile app for them. For those folks that were on site, they had to go out to a virtual space to find their schedule and that sort of thing. So we were able to find a solution that improves the overall experience on both sides. So the folks in person will have an app on their phone, just like we did in previous years, that also connects to the virtual platform. So you can be walking down the hallway, looking at your app. You can't get to the classroom in time and there's a live stream going on. You can actually click on that session and go right out to the video and watch it right from your phone. So lots of really cool technology improvements there.
That's great. I heard a few comments last year, so I think that's a great idea. You're trying to improve the platform and the app experience. I always enjoy the expo. I mean, that is one of the favorite things that I like to get to and see vendors and talk to vendors. Can you tell us a little bit about the expo?
Yeah, sure. So Expo's looking good. We have just about 200 booths sold at this point, which is pretty good for the end of April. We obviously will continue to push and grow that as much as we can. We are doing 2 product theaters in the Expo Hall this year. Last year we did one. It was pretty well received by both the supplier community and attendees. So a supplier can go into that one of those slots and do a product demonstration, or if they have new things that they're offering that they want folks to know about, they'll be in those product theaters throughout the expo time that we have on Sunday and Monday. And then, of course, if you're participating virtually, you can see the exhibit hall or the exhibitor list. They'll have contact information there. So if you're interested in a particular company or product and you need to make those connections, you can do so through the virtual platform by looking at their profiles and the listings in the platform and making those connections virtually.
Great. So everybody always wants to know, what's the special event?
The special event. Well, it will be special, like they usually are. But again, taking some feedback from the survey and folks that we talked to on site about last year, there were a few challenges logistically with the venue last year. We had to transport people on the bus. We had rain. There was lines to get in. So, although we always do our best to try to find a venue that can accommodate the numbers and the activities, sometimes we have a little challenge. So this year we're going to try something new. We're going to host the social event at the convention center. So there'll be no boarding buses.
Okay.
You can leave the expo hall and go directly there. We'll have a little bit of time to go back to your room and drop off all the lovely things you've picked up from our supplier community. And then you can join us at the convention center for our Delightfully Derby social event. So I'm not going to spoil all the surprises, but there will definitely be horses and racing involved and lots of activities. We are incorporating some charity events into that activity. So more to come on that, but folks can purchase tickets for special events, and a portion of that money goes then to local charities in Louisville. So really excited about trying something new. I mean, I've been around a long time, folks know. And
as we both have.
Right. And we've never done a social event at the convention center as long as I can remember, but we're really excited to offer something different and new, and anxious to hear the feedback on that.
That's great. I'm with you. I don't think we have, as long as I've been around, done one right there at the convention center. We both know how challenging transportation can be. Mm-hmm. Regardless of how well it's planned and how many buses you have, there are things you just can't foresee. So I think it's a great idea.
Good.
Super.
Good. Exciting.
Anything else you'd like to share with the membership about Louisville and Forum 2023?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to point out a couple of new things that you'll see within the schedule. We are actually curating content for 3 learning paths, and there'll be more information about this coming out. Our marketing folks are working diligently to try to get the schedule up on the website. That should be hopefully done within the next week or so. All the sessions have been assigned. So you'll be able to see what's being offered. But we are doing our own we are creating our own content for technology, construction, and cooperative procurement. So those 3 learning experiences, it's a little bit different than what you've seen in the past. If you are interested in one of those topics, let's say, for example, you need some training in technology procurement, you can go to all the sessions, or maybe you just want 1 or 2 pieces. But if you go through the whole experience in one of these paths, at the end, you'll have an opportunity to take an assessment and then earn a digital badge showing that you have expertise in that particular procurement area. So that's something new that we're trying this year. So it should be fun and interesting. Those sessions will be live streamed as well. So if you can't get into a room, if you've been to forum before and you're running to get to the session and you get there and the volunteer says, I'm sorry, you can't come in, fire marshal says there's too many people, we will have overflow rooms right near those spaces where you can go in, sit down, get your laptop, your whatever device you have, and you can watch that session from that room. You just won't be in the room. And then speaking of that, one thing that we learned last year that folks on the virtual side found it difficult to truly participate. We made an attempt to try to have volunteers in these rooms to, be the voice of the audience. And it was new, and it was, hard to kind of get people on track with that. So we're actually going to have staff in every single one of those rooms that are being streamed, and they will be the voice of the virtual audience. So if somebody is putting something in chat and has a question, when it comes time to ask questions, Todd will say, Kirk, I have a question from Barb from the audience, and ask that question, and then give you an opportunity as the facilitator or the presenter to answer those questions from the virtual audience. So that hopefully will improve that experience and make them feel more included in the program.
Great. Well, some exciting new initiatives.
Yes.
I'm really excited for Louisville, and I just know it's going to be a great forum. Anything else?
I don't think so. If you are participating virtually, again, you'll be in this platform, but for everyone after a forum, the sessions will be available on demand for 30 days after forum. So if you didn't get a chance to see something that you wanted to see and it was live streamed in Louisville, it's also recorded and available out on that platform. So plan your schedule accordingly. If there's 2 or 3 sessions that you want to attend in the same time frame, and 1 or 2 of those are being live streamed, go to the one that's in person. And then you have the ability to go back and watch those additional sessions within 30 days after the forum is over.
Okay. Well, great, Carrie. Thank you so much for your time today. I think you've really got some great things going on, and I'm excited for the initiatives. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Again, Kirk Buffington, Radio NIGP, and Carrie Winter. Thank you again. Good day.
Greetings, Radio NIGP listeners. I'm here with Valerie Scott. I'm John Walton, and we're talking about mindful moments and improving your situation. Valerie and I have been chatting a little bit, and we have a couple of ideas that we want to share with you all in the hopes that it can improve your daily life. When I think about procurement, like many other support services, one sort of negative aspect or stereotypical negative aspect is that we can sometimes feel like we're constantly under siege or unappreciated. I've heard that before, and I do know just from personal experience that can really take a toll on a team and on me and on you. And so a lot of times we tend to think about, well, it's other people. If other people would only change, right? And I do believe that there are techniques for getting others to change their behaviors, but we all know, we've heard it, that the things that we can really control are those things within ourselves. So we're urged to be mindful and reflective about our own thought patterns and our behavior patterns. In fact, I'll make this a bit of a true confession segment this time. I think I'm a slow learner on some of these things, but I've been trying, honestly. And one of the things that I've done in recent years is to use what I call Jedi mind tricks on myself. For those of you that are into the Star Wars universe, it's really just an example of like reframing something. If you think about something a certain way, that's not necessarily the reality or the only reality. There can be alternatives. So it's worth reframing your situation every now and then. I want to give you a specific example. One of the things that was weighing on me for several years now has been dealing with juggling the different priorities of all the contract and procurement requests that come to us. For a long time, I was sort of just in charge of managing that for my whole agency. And of course, that, a lot of people come to you and try and convince you why their need is the highest need, and everybody else does the same thing too. And that can take a toll. I imagine that this is common to many of you. It's often this priority setting need often comes up, and it always comes up if you don't have enough resources to keep up with the workload, right? So the question for you all is, are you in the same situation that I was in? Who does this priority setting? It often is the procurement people. But is it written that way? Is that the only reality that can happen? Looking back, trying to use some reflection, I think I just took on this burden of managing these priorities kind of without really talking to anybody. I just took it on. I think I saw it as something that I was supposed to be able to manage, and that I could be competent at doing this. But the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, as the years are going by, this is an emotional burden. And the other thing, even just from from a lean manufacturing standpoint, I was looking at and realizing, the physical time and effort I spend managing priorities and communicating about priorities, that actually means that I'm spending less effort actually working on the requests. I'm spending all my time managing them instead. And so I realized that I had slipped into a bit of a victim mentality. You could even call it a bit of a martyr complex. So once I had this little minor epiphany, I ended up going to our senior management team and talking to them about some alternatives and saying, hey, folks, I realize I have kind of taken on setting priorities for our whole entity. And I never really talked about that with you. Do you want me to continue doing that? Or would it be more appropriate for all of you senior decision makers, you executives, for you to be setting the priorities about the strategic, not strategic, but operational priorities for our department? And they said, oh, yeah, well, I'm glad you brought this to us. Yeah, I think we should, we're in charge of the agency. We should be setting the priorities. And I said, great. So then I started working with them to set up and support a system to help those decision makers set these various priorities amongst competing requests that come in at the same time. And by the way, I'll just tell you that that process does need to be managed. You have to make sure that the decision makers get enough information, true information about priority setting, because you don't want that dynamic of the boy who cried wolf too often, or Chicken Little always saying that the sky was falling. So those decision makers need actual information, including what's your deadline, and particularly what are the consequences if this deadline is not met. And then they get to decide, some of those consequences are just lower in priority than other consequences. And I'll tell you, that has done wonders for both me and the team that I work within and within the entity itself. It took a lot of sort of emotional pressure off of me. I'm like, hey, I'm happy to work as hard as I can on things in whatever order you tell me to work on them. The other thing it did was it gave those decision makers a whole lot of visibility about the priorities that were bubbling up from the staff level that they really didn't have as much visibility about. So they saw a lot more what was going on. The same thing with all the people who were turning in these requests. They could see that, they had more of a wider vision about what was going on throughout the whole entity, rather than just having their siloed little vision about what was important in the moment within their particular program. So another benefit that came out of that was the senior execs decided, hey, we need more resources in contracts. I didn't even really particularly have to prompt them so much. They could see it themselves. So this one little idea turned out to have a whole bunch of benefits, and it deals with how do you manage all these demands at work. Now, Valerie, I know you and I have been talking about that. I want to know your thoughts about struggling with demands at work.
Certainly. And John, I think what you've said is really important about all of that work coming to your team and, just trying to manage it, and then realizing like, wait a second, maybe that isn't all something that should be falling on our shoulders. And I think the resourcing piece is so important about having enough resources and having that transparency and visibility so that you can demonstrate that you do need the resources to support your entity at the level it needs to be supported. Because when you don't, you get the same people constantly putting in over and above and putting in 50, 60-hour work weeks because burnout, absolutely. And, we all want to do a good job. I believe procurement professionals are among the best of us, and we all really, really care. And it shows in the extra time that goes in. And as we put in that extra time, we kind of let our own needs take a back seat a lot, I believe. And one thing that tends to not happen is vacation sometimes. And we might say, I don't have time for a vacation because I have all of these things I have to do and all of these people who are depending on me and our citizens, our students, all of the constituents. They need me. They need procurement to show up and do their work. And, I've been there too, where I'm just grinding away and I should be taking vacation, but I feel like I don't have time to take vacation. But I'll tell you, the time when I realized I needed to take vacation was when my staff said, hey, Valerie, you need to take vacation. Go away. You need to shut off the email. We can handle this. Like, you need to go and take some time for you. And it wasn't a negative thing. It was actually very positive because it was like, oh my gosh, especially being a new manager in 2020 and immediately the pandemic happening, and feeling like, oh, I can't step away now, to have a team there to say, like, this is exactly when you need to recharge your batteries, because we've just been going nonstop trying to support all of these different needs, and you're new in your role and you need a minute to catch your breath. And so, one thing we can do within our teams, I think, is to build that trust and that expertise with our colleagues so that we know things are going to be okay when we need to walk away for a little bit and have some time to recharge our batteries. And as we resource our agencies, we're better able to manage that and make sure people have time to do that and have a chance to show up really, really well. Because if you're completely, drained, you're not going to show up bringing your A game. You're going to bring your C game or your D game. And so I think if we reframe it, to use a Jedi mind trick, and look at it as, I'm doing this so I can show up better for my agency, it becomes less of a consternation to take a vacation. John, do you take vacation?
Well, I do, but again, I would sometimes slip back into that martyr mindset. I for a while, I dreaded the vacations because it seemed like I had to work extra hard for 2 weeks beforehand just to try and clear the decks, so that I could go off. And then even if I shut off my phone while I was gone, I knew that as soon as I came back, my email box was going to blow up and I was going to have to work twice as hard for the next 2 weeks to catch up. And that sort of spoiled the idea of vacations. So I had to do some, reflection and reframing on that too, just taking vacations. So I like what you're saying I really have tried to turn that martyr mindset into more of a mentor mindset, or a mentor mentality, more of a generous one, where I'm really trying to work with the rest of the team. Now, this isn't an instant pill that solves everything, but I have really tried to be much more generous and upbeat about sharing the work, frankly, and sharing why do I have to think I'm the expert? I'm not that special compared to everybody else on the team. So I needed to share what I knew and help prepare others to be able to handle it. I shouldn't be thinking, oh, I'm the only one that can handle this. And while I'm gone on vacation, I know it's just going to be there when it gets back. Now, having worked with everybody else, I feel confident in taking off on vacation, knowing that this is in some cases, a learning opportunity for people. And most of the time, I feel totally confident that they've got it. And so that has really transformed things for me, and it's transformed things for the agency. I think that's the way we all should be operating, is sharing what we know so that the whole team is cross-trained with what each of us know. We've shared it amongst each other. Well, at any rate, that's all I have to say about vacations.
Well, here's what I would say to our Radio NIGP audience. If you haven't got a 2023 goal, maybe it should be to take a real vacation, to walk away, to shut down the email, and to build that trust with your team where you're able to do that. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to us this month, and we will see you next time on Radio NIGP.
Hello, and welcome to Way to Grow, an NIGP mentorship moment. This month, all of us here at NIGP Radio are reflecting on mindful moments. And I'm sure that many of us recognize that we can improve our own personal growth by taking a few moments to reflect on our own inner spirit in an effort to find a level of inner peace that's akin to pruning the branches of a tree in order to encourage its growth. Today, I'm joined by Radio NIGP's very own Christy Varda, along with our special guest, Jody Jacoby, who is the current chair of the NIGP Member Council. And Jody is here today to speak to the virtues of yoga and how the consistent practice of yoga can help us with our own intrinsic growth. So Jody and Christy, welcome to Way to Grow.
Thank you.
So Jody, I'm going to ask you first. It's been said that the practice of yoga is the journey of the self, through the self, to the self. How has that applied to your own life?
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, yoga is all about self-study, and it's a yoga Sanskrit term, which is from the Hindu language deep in the Indian culture called svadhyaya, which is self-study, and it's about getting to know yourself better so you can show up better for other people. You can be more effective, you can be more resilient, you can manage your time and your energy better. And in fact, the asana, which are the yoga postures, is really only one of the 8 limbs of yoga. Yoga is so much bigger than the physical poses. Yoga involves getting to know yourself better, to be able to save your energy, to be able to show up, as they say, as a peaceful warrior, to add value to every person and every situation. And so for me, it's really given me an opportunity to pause, take care of myself. I was at a point in my career and my life when, frankly, I was feeling really overwhelmed and burdened. And yoga helped me slow down my mind, come back to my center. Definitely, I enjoyed the physicalness of the practice, stretching out my muscles, bringing peace to my mind so that I can show up the way that I want to and that I need to, not only for myself, but everyone else.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So, I just wonder, you already answered part of my next question, but how have you applied the lessons learned from your yoga experiences to your professional life? And what would you tell a professional colleague interested in exploring yoga?
Well, first, I think it's a beautiful practice that everyone at every level can enjoy, regardless of your age and your fitness ability. You don't need to have a lot of time or knowledge, just some simple, again, stilling of the mind, allowing that meditation and that slow movement in each posture to recognize how you're feeling. And then when you're able to recognize some of those triggers, it gives you an opportunity to just slow down and think about, how do you want to respond, besides how do you want to react? And again, it's that self-study, coming back again and again to do that inquiry. Instead of being fearful of a situation, think about it as being curious and being in inquiry. And the postures teach you that. Just like in life, how you're feeling. Are you in a fight or flight mode? Are you feeling energized? Are you ready to add value? Or frankly, are you exhausted? And like, hands up, I think we've all been there many a times, and will continue to be there. So do you need to give your mind and your body rest? And that's what yoga is. It helps you learn about yourself, how you treating yourself, and then it helps you be more aware and more present with how do you want to show up in the world.
That's amazing. Jody, I want to thank you for your insightful contributions today.
It's an honor to be here, and we are presenting. I'm partnering with a fantastic colleague, Bobby, and we are presenting a session at Forum, and we'll have some yogic principles and some mindfulness and meditation. So if you're curious, plan to attend that session and you can learn more. And we'd love to have a deeper conversation with you, just to share some of the tools that we've used to help get started on this journey.
Well, that sounds like something for everybody to look forward to. So thank you again. So now, Christy, I know that you have a special exercise for our audience to help them to experience their own mindful moments. So at this time, I'll turn it over to you to explain.
Thanks so much, Keith. Just like Jody, I hit a point in my career where things were just seemed insurmountable. Things seemed very difficult. And I stumbled upon a book called Meditation for the Fidgety Skeptics. And it was designed for people just like me, those ADD, ADHD type, hyper kind of people. When they go through many, many things. And one of the tenets of this is compassion for yourself and compassion for others. Now, I'd experienced a compassion exercise where you put yourself in the shoes of somebody who you were in conflict with, and you said, just like me, I'm and such. But I like this shorter compassion exercise I got from this book and the app that goes with it. In sense, and keep in mind that anytime I say the word I, that can also be replaced with the word they. And it's just a simple 4-phrase exercise where you go, may I be healthy. May I be happy. May I be safe. And may I be at ease. And just by repeating those 4 phrases, either to yourself or thinking that of others, you can push that compassion out to others by seeing a colleague of yours that may be going through a rough time and thinking, may they be healthy. May they be happy. May they be safe. May they be at ease. And you find, just like Jody mentioned with yoga, of finding that inner peace, that compassion, because before you can start growing and building on your inner strength, you first have to give yourself compassion. And others need to learn to give themselves and others compassion before they enter into any type of situation. And it really does help you to just feel better about life in general, come into work every day, happy to be there, and just to do a job well done. And so that is my offering out to our colleagues who, in honor of this this topic of mental health and how it affects our colleagues and in their workplace.
Wow. That was awesome, Christy. Thank you for taking us through that exercise. I'm sure that this will be very helpful to many of our audience out there. And we all had an opportunity to grow. But right now we're just about out of time. So I want to thank both Jody and Christy once again. And I want to remind you that you can find the NIGP mentorship program information on the mentorship website page in NIGP, which is www.nigp.org/mentorship. And so telling you now, this is Keith Glatt speaking, and hoping that you'll join me soon here on Radio NIGP for our next segment of Way to Grow. And reminding you that this is Radio NIGP.
Hello, friends. I hope this broadcast finds each of you having the best day ever. Spring is here and summer is just around the corner. It's wonderful to see everything in various stages of coming out in full bloom. Here in the South, we lovingly refer to this as pollen season, so please forgive your friends in the South for our itchy red eyes and our runny noses for just a few more weeks. But that being said, I am excited to chat today about something that is so very important to so many of us, and that is mental health. Never before in our society have we been more aware of neurodiversities and mental health challenges than we are today. During the pandemic, we began to vocalize the importance of work-life balance. We appreciated the importance of having a strong network and support system to help offset the struggles that isolation can often bring. Unfortunately, for many whose struggle is with the battlefield of the mind, the awareness alone does not bring about change or relief. As we continue to see a rise in those who have died by suicide, we have to recognize and take those necessary steps to be kind to others and ensure we're having those meaningful conversations to ensure that those around us are truly okay and not just going through the motions. Don't assume that your coworker, your neighbor, your friend, or that stranger beside you in the checkout line is winning in their journey with mental health struggles. Fact is, it's often those that look like they have everything together that are struggling the most. They have just gotten really good at masking the pain and struggle they face on a daily basis. If I could encourage any one of you that might be walking the path on a mental health journey for yourself or someone you know, love, or care about, I would encourage you to find someone to talk to that can join you along your way. Listen, if I were cooking dinner tonight and I was chopping vegetables and I sliced my hand, no one would think twice about me going to the doctor to get stitches to stop that bleeding. If I were diabetic, it would make sense that I'd need to take insulin to remain healthy. If I were wanting to start a weight loss journey, it'd be a good thing for me to get a personal trainer to help motivate me at the gym and to guide me through those exercises that I might need to target those areas that might be my greatest weakness. Talking to a friend, going to see your doctor, or finding a therapist or a counselor to talk to about mental health is equally as important as taking insulin is for one who's diabetic. Make the call, friends. Set the appointment. Have that challenging conversation, but truly just be kind always. You never know the journey the person next to you is going through. Let's think about that, shall we? Until next time, friends, stay strong and keep going and keep growing. You've got this.